Hashtag Political Philosophy Challenge. What is truly required is a renewal of the knowledge of those things which legitimize our authority, and a renaissance in a particular art. I'm just sitting here waiting for all you wonderful, brilliant people to start diving in. Good day! Let's move along with the citizendium.org's timeline of political thought. They have an agenda. We're going to get to that. It's interesting. Let's move along and cite the items that are in their list up to 0. Here we are at the citizendium.org and the ancient world. We went over Confucius, Pericles. Socrates was the Athenian philosopher who is credited with laying the foundations of Western philosophy. He was sentenced to death in Athens for heresy. The 12 Tables was the first recorded statement of Roman law. The Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. Plato was 428 to 347 BC. The Mytilene debate that led the Athenian decision to execute all the men on the rebellious island of Mytilene was 427 BC. We have Aristotle, 384 BC. He was a pupil of Plato and the author of the Politics. There's 39 of his works still in existence. 341 BC, Epicurus, the founder of hedonism. 331, Zeno of Citium, founder of Stoicism. 106 BC, Cicero. 49 BC, Julius Caesar, the Republican, prompting the Roman Civil War, which led to transition from republic to empire. Something amazing began with Socrates. Socrates was teaching Socratic method. This is dialogue, conversation, that it works to drive into the heart of a matter and get at the truth. There are no works left or remaining that were from Socrates, but Plato is known as the recorder of Socratic dialogue and a critic of democracy. Plato wrote the book Republic and a few others. Plato wrote this book Republic, and in it there's a collection of Socratic discussions. Socrates is talking with some other fellows, and they're talking about what it is to be just. Socrates was teaching his Socratic method to young people, and he was killed for that. Plato was a recorder of Socratic method. Aristotle was a student of Plato's. Aristotle has 39 works remaining today, one of which is Politics, another is Rhetoric. Now, I believe that Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, whatever we have of their works, is middle school reading, and most homeschools would agree. It's a tremendous failure on the part of the government public education system that middle school students aren't reading this literature. It is mentioned some in high school, but that's about it. And what we're getting ready to see is that dialectic, politics, rhetoric, it's all art. These gentlemen were teaching art. This is the work Rhetoric by Aristotle, and from 350 BC. Rhetoric is the counterpart of dialectic. Both alike are concerned with such things as come more or less within the general ken of all men and belong to no definite science. Accordingly, all men make use more or less of both. For to a certain extent, all men attempt to discuss statements and to maintain them, to defend themselves and to attack others. Ordinary people do this either at random or through practice and from acquired habit. Both ways being possible, the subject can plainly be handled systematically, for it is possible to inquire the reason why some speakers succeed through practice and others spontaneously, and everyone will at once agree that such an inquiry is the function of an art. The definition of dialectic: the art of investigating or discussing the truth of opinions. The art of investigating or discussing the truth of opinions. Synonyms are discussion, debate, dialogue, logical argument, reasoning, argumentation. The definition of rhetoric: The art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. Synonyms: oratory, eloquence. Language designed to have a persuasive or impressive effect on its audience, but often regarded as lacking in sincerity or meaningful content. An enthymeme is a rhetorical syllogism, a three-part deductive argument used in oratorical practice. Originally theorized by Aristotle, there are 4 types of enthymeme, at least 2 of which are described in Aristotle's work. Aristotle referred to the enthymeme as the body of proof, the strongest of rhetorical proofs, a kind of syllogism. All humans are mortal, Socrates is human, therefore Socrates is mortal. While syllogisms lay out all of their premises and conclusion explicitly, these kind of enthymemes keep at least one of the premises of conclusion unstated. Discussion and dialogue as art. Some of the finest men ever in existence were artists when it comes to dialectic. They were the leaders in communities and in government. And in America, these most precious of our men are so often in military, and I don't think they were taught the art of dialectic. Just saying. And this work, then, by Aristotle, Rhetoric. Rhetoric is the counterpart of dialectic, which we saw was dialogue. Now, the framers of the current treatise on rhetoric have constructed but a small portion of that art. The modes of persuasion are the only true constituents of the art. Anything else is merely accessory. These writers, however, say nothing about enthymemes, which are the substance of rhetorical persuasion, but deal mainly with non-essentials. The arousing of prejudice, pity, anger, and similar emotions has nothing to do with the essential facts, but is merely a personal appeal to the man who is judging the case. Consequently, if the rules for trials, which are now laid down, some states, especially in well-governed states, were applied everywhere, such people would have nothing to say. All men, no doubt, think that the laws should prescribe such rules, but some, as in the court of Areopagus, give practical effect to their thoughts, and forbid talk about non-essentials. This is sound law and custom. It is not right to pervert the judge by moving him to anger or envy or pity. One might as well warp a carpenter's rule before using it. Again, a litigant has clearly nothing to do but to show that the alleged fact is so or is not so, that it has or has not happened. As to whether a thing is important or unimportant, just or unjust, the judge must surely refuse to take his instructions from the litigants. He must decide for himself all such points as the lawgiver has not already defined for him. Now it is of great moment that well-drawn laws should themselves define all the points they possibly can, and leave as few as may be to the decision of the judges, and this for several reasons. First, to find one man or a few men who are sensible persons and capable of legislating and administering justice is easier than to find a large number. This is a wonderful book published in 1898. You can get it yesterday's classics online. It's something real neat right here. It wasn't a Saturday afternoon, but it was on some similar holiday that Horatius and Valerius and Julius and the others played Senate, using the place enclosed by the pillars of a portico for their meeting and conducting the affairs of the city as wisely as they could. Horatius was consul, and he assembled his senators and began to ask their opinions on the very subject he had heard discussed when he went to the real Senate with his father. "But stop," said the boy. "Before we begin, let's see who shall be tribune. Somebody must speak for the plebes." "We ought to vote and choose a tribune." "Well," said Valerius, "run into the Potter's Street and round to the corner dealer's corner and call in the plebeian boy to a comitia, and we will choose a tribune of the people." So they vote, and Calpurnius is chosen tribune. Now said Horatius to him, when Julius makes his long speech, and we are all going to vote that the treasures of Attalus shall go into the public treasury, we must stand up and say veto, and that will stop us. And then you can propose to have them divided for the poor plebeians. So the boy played Senate and practiced the art of governing. That was a Roman boy. The story of Horatius is the Roman boy. It starts with a Persian boy. It goes through a few centuries. It's a really nice book. Just to bring this timeline regarding the art a little closer to our present day, let's jump to 1762 to Jean-Jacques Rousseau's book, The Social Contract. Okay, you should be able to find a copy of The Social Contract and Other Writings by Jean-Jacques Rousseau at your library, or have it ordered there. You can purchase it online. It was published in 1762. It was immediately and widely attacked. When the government issued a writ for his arrest, Rousseau was forced to flee Paris and live as a hunted man. The Social Contract, Rousseau rejects the notion that human beings must choose between governed and being free, and asserts that individual freedom is linked with civil society only when its members live according to their consciences, not as slaves of their passions. Of paramount importance to Rousseau's argument is his distinction between the completely self-interested human being, the brute, and the one who lives with a sense of moral obligation, the man of reason. Rousseau also elaborates his concepts of the general will and the will of all. The volume also contains the early treatise, A Discourse on the Arts and Sciences, A Discourse on the Origin of Inequality, and A Discourse on Political Economy. This book is available online in its entirety on several sites. Constitution Society or constitution.org has it, and we're going to directly to Book 3, Chapter 10, The Abuse of Government and Its Tendency to Degenerate. The abuse of government and its tendency to degenerate. As the particular will acts constantly in opposition to the general will, the government continually exerts itself against the sovereignty. The greater this exertion becomes, the more the Constitution changes. And as there is in this case no other corporate will to create an equilibrium by resisting the will of the prince, sooner or later the prince must inevitably suppress the sovereign and break the social treaty. This is the unavoidable and inherent defect which, from the very birth of the body politic, tends ceaselessly to destroy it, as age and death end by destroying the human body. There are two general courses by which government degenerates: when it undergoes contraction or when its state is dissolved. Government undergoes contraction when it passes from the many to the few, that is, from democracy to aristocracy, and from aristocracy to royalty. To do so is its natural propensity. If it took the backward course from the few to the many, it would be said that it was relaxed, but this inverse sequence is impossible. Indeed, governments never change their form except when their energy is exhausted and leaves them too weak to keep what they have. If a government at once extended its sphere and relaxed its stringency, its force would become absolutely nil, and it would persist still less. It is therefore necessary to wind up the spring and tighten the hold as it gives way, or else the state it sustains will come to grief. The dissolution of the state may come about in either of two ways. First, when the prince ceases to administer the state in accordance with the laws and usurps the sovereign power. A remarkable change then occurs. Not the government, but the state undergoes contraction. I mean that the great state is dissolved and another is formed within it, composed solely of the members of the government, which becomes for the rest of the people merely master and tyrant, so that the moment the government usurps the sovereignty, the social compact is broken, and all private citizens recover by right their natural liberty and are forced but not bound to obey. I just have to say right there, there is a creature of statute that is the state, and it is all in caps, state. The original states are uninhabited. We don't have an oath to them, and I can't wait to get on about oaths with you, because it's real interesting. Early Americans, they all had oaths, especially the founders, and the Quakers specifically were extremely superstitious about the oath. There was one statement that Jesus made regarding oaths. Well, he said swear, and it was during a time when there was a lot of controversy over swearing because it was being abused in the temple. There were swearing on a lot of different things, and they weren't good for their word. So this one statement may have been specific to the context. And all throughout Scripture, other than that, oaths were relied upon between God and humanity. So oaths are a really big deal and require their own little video. And their lack thereof is a serious problem. I don't even know where to go with that. What I can and should say here is congressmen have declared an oath. The president has to declare an oath. The Senate has an oath. All of the servicemen and servicewomen that we allow to go off into the military and fight declare an oath to the U.S. We have no place in our local government where we can declare our allegiance, but if you look up a U.S. national, you will see it's someone who supposedly has allegiance to the U.S. Yet the average person only has a birth certificate. So I just want to point out here, the oath, that's our sacred honor, our allegiance. That is the most important thing as a human being that we have. This seems to be controversial in a way that I don't really understand, because I've went back and looked at the history, and all through Greek, Roman history, even among the Jewish, oaths were very important. From Genesis all through the Scripture, they are very important. And the Quakers spent a lot of time in prison in early America because they were not willing to declare an oath. They were very superstitious about oaths because of that one comment Jesus made. And like I said, you can go read the history around that statement he made, and he specifically said swearing, it is an oath. So I really think this is something that all Christians really need to look at, because I just can't believe this is so huge. And you know, I hate to think that somebody would get mad at me. I love my preacher to death. I sure wouldn't want him to get mad at me about it. But it is serious. There is only that one line Jesus said, and he said swearing, and in the history of it, the rabbis were abusing the swearing, and he said, you know, do not swear, don't swear on your head, or don't swear on a city. He did not say, do not make an oath declaring your sacred honor in such a way that gives you authority or allows you to represent those who need your representation. And I just have to say here, I had a Christian friend tell me once, oh, do not make an oath. That's very bad. And, and I just have to say, why is it that everyone elected, everyone around us that has any position of authority, the police officers, why are they taking oaths then? And how can you sit there and not take an oath while all of your servant leaders are taking oaths and think that you're doing something good, while the people who are protecting you are declaring the oath? I mean, it's really hard for me to understand how someone can believe an oath is bad and sit back and let a policeman go out in harm's way because he's made an oath just to protect you while you don't. I just don't get it. Don't mean to make anybody mad. Don't want to ruffle any feathers. This is a big deal. The same thing happens when the members of the government severely usurp the power they should exercise only as a body. This is as great an infraction of the laws and results in even greater disorders. There are then, so to speak, as many princes as there are magistrates, and the state, no less divided than the government, either perishes or changes its form. When the state is dissolved, the abuse of government, whatever it is, bears the common name of anarchy. To distinguish, democracy degenerates into ochlocracy and aristocracy into oligarchy. And I would add that royalty degenerates into tyranny. But this last word is ambiguous and needs explanation. In vulgar usage, a tyrant is a king who governs violently and without regard for justice and law. In the exact sense, a tyrant is an individual who arrogates to himself the royal authority without having a right to it. This is how the Greeks understood the word tyrant. 2. The death of the body politic. Such is the nature and inevitable tendency of the best constituted governments. If Sparta and Rome perished, what state can hope to endure forever? If we would set up a long-lived form of government, let us not even dream of making it eternal. If we are to succeed, we must not attempt the impossible or flatter ourselves that we are endowing the work of man with a stability of which human conditions do not permit. The body politic, as well as with the human body, begins to die as soon as it is born and carries in itself the cause of its destruction. But both may have a constitution that is more or less robust and suited to preserve them a longer or a shorter time. The constitution of man is the work of nature, that of the state, the work of art. It is not in men's power to prolong their own lives, but it is for them to prolong as much as possible the life of the state by giving it the best possible constitution. The best constituted state will have an end, but it will end later than any other unless some unforeseen accident brings about its untimely destruction. The life principle of the body politic lies in the sovereign authority. The legislative power is the heart of the state. The executive power is its brain, which causes the movement of all the body parts. The brain may become paralyzed and the individual still live. A man may remain an imbecile and live, but as soon as the heart ceases to perform its functions, the animal is dead. The state subsists by means not of the laws, but of the legislative power. Yesterday's law is not binding today, but silence is taken for tacit consent. Silence is taken for tacit consent. And the sovereign is held to confirm incessantly the laws. It does not abrogate as it might. All that it has once declared itself, it wills always, unless it revokes its declaration. Why then is so much respect paid to the laws, to old laws? For this very reason. We must believe that nothing but the excellence of old acts of will can have preserved them so long. If the sovereign had not recognized them as throughout salutary, it would have revoked them 1,000 times. This is why, so far from growing weak, the laws continually gain new strength in any well-constituted state. The precedent of antiquity makes them daily more venerable, while wherever the laws grow weak as they become old, this proves that there is no longer a legislative power and that the state is dead. How the sovereign authority maintains itself. The sovereign, having no force other than the legislative power, acts only by means of the laws, and the laws being solely the authentic acts of the general will. The sovereign cannot act save when the people is assembled. The people in assembly, I shall be told, is a mere chimera. It is so today, but 2,000 years ago it was not so. Has man's nature changed? The bounds of possibility in moral matters are less narrow than we imagine. It is our weakness, our vices, and our prejudices that combine them. Base souls have no belief in great men. Vile slaves smile in mockery at the name of liberty. Thanks again for watching. I was really hoping to make a 5-minute video, but you know, this whole art thing, liberty, the people assembled, assembly, it's an art. It's really important art. Good day.